Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our November Business Builder Breakfast. My name is Justine Paradiso, and I am the Marketing and Programs Manager for the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you on behalf of our chamber staff for choosing to be with us this morning. We are so excited to have one of our favorite presenters, Ms. Lisa Schaefer, with us today. Before we begin, I want to go ahead and thank our amazing sponsors who make this event possible: Medical Associates Clinic and Health Plans, Midwest One Bank, Q Casino, and TH Media are ultimate presenting sponsors, and our platinum sponsors: Anderson Window and Door, Collins Community Credit Union, Cartograph, Digital Dubuque, Envision, Fidelity Bank, Forge Social, Grand River Center, Grand River Medical Group, Holiday Inn, John Deere Dubuque Works, Mercy One Dubuque, Stonehill Communities, Town Square Media, Unity Point Health Dubuque, and US Bank. A virtual applause to them everywhere for making events like this possible and for us to be able to bring these to our members. So as I said, our speaker today is Lisa Schaefer. She is an edutainer, a counselor, a college instructor, and owner of Shine with Schaefer, a coaching and consulting business that focuses on developing leadership. Today, Lisa will be presenting Rise Up to Resiliency, where she will share helpful and insightful ways to foster resilience in times of adversity, which, let's face it, that's where we are. We're going to discuss compassion fatigue with her, what that is, and strategies to overcome it. Lisa is a graduate of University of Wisconsin with a master's degree in counseling and bachelor's degree in psychology. She is a founding member of the John Maxwell Leadership Team and has presented trainings to over 100 different companies in the nation on the Maxwell philosophy of leadership and service. She brings high energy to the classroom and uses entertainment techniques to educate. Her hope is that people will shine by sharing strengths, having heart, innovating, networking, empowering others. Please give a warm chamber welcome to Lisa Schaefer.
Hey, thank you so much, everybody. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited, of course, to really talk about something that I think is important more than ever as we approach the holiday season and as we truly look at what's been happening in our current situation in our world. I just believe in the importance of being able to look at mindset and to really truly be able to understand where we are and where we're going. But the first thing I always like to ask people is, how are you doing? You know, right now we have had a lot of adversity, and oftentimes I just want to check in to say, hey, are you feeling like you're doing okay? You're making your way through all of the changes. Or do you think in yourself, Lisa, I'm not doing so well. I really just want to move away to an island. You know, during times of stress and adversity, we have two ways to really think. We can think, are we going to respond or are we going to react? And oftentimes during traumatic situations, we choose to kind of dissociate for a while. We maybe just want to escape for a while. And sometimes we say, you know what? I'm going to do that best I can with what I have to kind of move forward. And it really starts to look at your mindset. What is happening in the situations? Because every single day we are moving through some type of adverse situation. So what we're looking at right now is this idea of trauma. COVID is a trauma. And oftentimes people say, well, okay, what's going on that this is a trauma? It's any type of situation that we do not have total control over that disrupts our normal routines or patterns of behavior. We had things that we did routinely, just subconsciously. We went through the motions, and then all of a sudden things changed and we have more awareness. We have more heightened fear. We have this idea of, wow, what's going on and how do I stay safe? How do I keep others safe? How do I keep myself engaged during these difficult times? Well, I always like to point out that trauma has a cycle. And with this cycle, this impacts our belief systems and really how we're seeing things. Back in March, of course, we had somewhat of a warning. We had a warning that this was coming. You know, we were hearing about this coronavirus. What was that going to mean to us? What was that going to do? How do we have to prepare for it? I remember I was in a nursing home at the time and I was doing a training, and they started to look at their CDC guidelines, and they were trying to say, hey, how can we isolate? How can we prepare? What do we need to do? And all of a sudden, the next day, that impact hit. It seemed like that warning and that threat time was about a 3-day notice, and then everything shifted. And that impact pushed people into what we call the hero stage. Some of us may still be in this hero stage. That's when we were trying to do everything as quickly as possible. We were again saying, hey, what can I do? How can I shift this? We started saying yes to so many things because, again, we were going to beat this, we're going to fight this, we're going to move through this. And that hero stage really got people agile. They were thinking and responding in ways that, again, I'm doing what I can to make sure that I'm keeping everyone safe. I'm doing what I can to make sure that we're doing best business practices so that our businesses don't go under. We're doing the best we can to, again, really focus on what needs to be done right now. And so we had this hero stage, and a lot of people, you know, of course, were getting signs. We put signs in people's yards and really emphasizing how heroic people have been. That hero stage quickly went to a quick honeymoon. And that honeymoon is when we started putting hearts in our windows, and we're all in this together, and we're all in this storm, and we'll make it through this storm, and we're going to learn new things. But what happens in trauma is that honeymoon is short-lived. You know, you can do this for about 6 months. You can stay in that hero stage, in that honeymoon stage, because you're working through what we consider acute stress. Then what happens is now we're like, is this ever going to end? This is getting worse. I thought it was getting better. We start to go into disillusionment. I thought my businesses was doing okay. Now all of a sudden I'm going to have to do this now. And what happens is it starts to trigger more fear, and it starts to trigger exhaustion, and it starts to trigger anger and frustration. Now more than ever, we're starting to see trigger points for people, and you're seeing a divide of where people's value systems are. I believe this, you believe this, and we start basically saying, I'm not going to budge. I've got to get you to believe my way. And you see all these different disillusionment things that start to happen that's causing frustration and exhaustion. That's where you're starting to see compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is things that are starting to look past 6 months. That's when it becomes kind of this chronic stress. And we're experiencing this trauma. So you might see some of that post-trauma situation that's happening. So again, being aware of that process, that we ultimately are kind of, again, looking at that. So as you're focusing on this, we're still in what we consider disillusionment, because during trauma, it's within this year. Some of us move through this quicker though, and we start to say, hey, let's reconstruct, let's shift, let's start putting new business practices in place. This is what we can do. This is what's happening. So again, how are you doing? Where are you at in this cycle? And again, being okay with where you are. Some people are telling me, you know what, Lisa, I start the morning out and I'm like in honeymoon stage. I'm like, yep, tell me what I need to do. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to make this work. And then maybe you find out, oh my gosh, we don't have enough of this, or this didn't happen, or this process fell through, or, you know, I can't get to people because everybody's remote, and we might get into disillusionment. We may bounce back and forth between these stages just on a given day. But recognizing and realizing that this is actually a situation that we're in, and we're in this again together. However, remember, in this storm, some of us may be in a luxury yacht, and some of us are in a canoe making sure, hope to God, it doesn't sink. But we're in this and we're moving through this, and we have to kind of understand that. When we look at that process, then what we start to see is this idea of change. You know, there's been so many changes that have been happening on top of COVID. You know, having to teach kids at home, having to set up different types of systems for daycare. Then we had all these storms go through. And then again, just standard business practices of, I have to make sure that I'm doing the best I can to keep my staff safe, myself safe, my family safe, as well as help those in need. But where is your mindset in it? Because really, stress isn't actually the stuff we're holding on to. It's how long we're holding on to it for. And it's coming from so many different areas. Right now, more than ever, we need process and we need consistency. And when we have consistency in a process and we kind of know what to expect, it helps us stay more focused. It helps us kind of minimize some of that compassion fatigue. It helps us plan something that we somewhat can control, and people have a need to be able to control. We want to be able to feel as though, again, we have choices and we have decisions. And when we hold on to that stress for too long, we're not utilizing our good stress techniques. We're not practicing some good skill sets. We get into this fatigue. People are saying, what does this look like? How do I know if I have it? Of course, there are assessments that you can take, but it's really, again, people starting just to feel burdened. That's why I asked you at the beginning, how many of you just want to run away to an island because you're just tired? You're like, I don't know if I can people today. And it can sometimes get into blame for us because when we're fatigued, our defense mechanisms go up. And maybe we start taking things a little bit more personal. And we, again, maybe try to isolate because that's going to minimize the stress. But what we're finding is we're finding the loneliness factor going up. So when we isolate, we're feeling again like we're the only one that's experiencing this. And in reality, it takes time for us to just check in. A lot of times people are saying, well, I'm just too tired. I don't want to do anything. I'm having a hard time concentrating. I can't sleep. I am bottling up my emotions. And then all of a sudden I snap over stuff that I never used to snap. What's going on? These, again, are just some symptoms. And one of the things that I encourage people to think about is that when we're in this mindset, it's trying to help. We're helping people. But when we're helping people, we, again, may take on some of their trauma as well. And so it becomes so essential to build resiliency and to make sure that you're doing self-care. More than ever, self-care needs to be at the forefront. And people say, well, I don't have time for self-care. You can't afford to not make time for self-care. We've got to find at least 10 minutes a day, if not an hour. If you could do a day a week for self-care, again, that's going to boost that resiliency. And realizing that you don't have to be perfect. Right now, my friends that are perfectionists are struggling because they don't have that control. They're like, I have to have this perfect. Being present is more important than being perfect. And making progress is more important than being perfect. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on really mindset reframing to build that resiliency, to kind of move past that compassion fatigue. One of the biggest things I'm encouraging people to do is limit the amount of news that you're watching, because that can re-traumatize you. Again, we have daily reports. Those daily reports can cause some stress sometimes. Know what you need to know, but again, try to minimize that. Realize that, again, that in life, there is going to be pain and there's going to be suffering, and realize that sometimes I don't have control over that. I've just got to be with where I'm at. You know, sometimes we try to push through our emotions too quickly. And I say, just feel it. It's okay to feel it. And then we can move through it. Again, just recognizing that it exists. And one of the big things too right now, you're seeing this idea of, it's Thanksgiving. What are we grateful for? And can we start to look at the gratitude? I always ask people, what has been something that you've learned about yourself in the last 9 months? What have you been most proud of in the last 9 months? What, again, has been maybe your biggest loss in the last 9 months? But what's been your biggest gain? So just looking and trying to appreciate that gratitude. And that truly is a mindset. They did a study. I don't know, I've been watching a lot of Netflix lately because, some of my other entertainment has been changing. So there was a study done on the Happiness Project, and they were looking for the happiest people in the world. And what they were finding was people who had purpose and saw what they did have versus what they didn't have had a much happier life. So again, just looking at that gratitude, trying to find meaning right now. What is the meaning in this? What is it trying to teach me? One of the things that COVID's done for me, I had to completely shift my way of doing things. And the meaning it's brought to me is the importance of simplifying. I was always running around from event to event, and I'm busy, woohoo, I'm going to glamorize being busy. And I was finding myself getting a little bit tired, and then I started missing all of that. And then I started to say, you know what? It's teaching me how to be. We're human beings, not human doings. And so it's giving me a chance to really focus on simplicity. What can I do to simplify? Many businesses have gotten rid of practices that they didn't have time for. They were value streaming. They simplified processes. Maybe that they got rid of some of that extra. Again, what's the meaning that you're seeing in the suffering? And if you have to blame something, a lot of times we have a lack of trust, and so we maybe want to get into blaming. I always encourage you to blame the situation, not the person. Blame the situation. Right now you're seeing a lot of polar thinking in many different areas. And so it's like, let's not blame that person and think about how bad that person is. Let's just blame the situation. And the big thing too is showing compassion for yourself. You may be making mistakes. It's okay. You may be having some stress or anxiety. It's okay. It's a matter of just honoring it, because we want to get re-engaged. And re-engaging is just educating ourselves. It's accepting where we are right now. Today is the only day we need to really focus on. We do want to look at, is what I'm doing today getting me to where I want to go? But again, looking at this idea of accepting where we are. The other thing too is find somebody who you can just be you with. Who in your area can you be psychologically safe with? Who's somebody that you trust that can validate you? And to show you again that you're not alone. Just one of the big things I would encourage you to do is do a high-low of the week. Find people and just share, hey, this was my high this week. This was my low this week. This is what I'm hoping for next week. And just having some of those small little conversations, I think is going to help you validate where you're at. You can do it at the end of the day. I know some people do this with their family at dinner. Hey, what was the high of the day? What was the low of the day? And sometimes people are like, oh, that's so cheesy. It's amazing how people actually get into that. The other thing right now is establishing and clarifying your boundaries. Know what's working for you. If you're taking on a lot of tasks, one of the things I encourage you to do is prioritize those tasks. What are the things that are urgent and important? Plan to get those done. What are the things that maybe you can have as important but not urgent? Maybe again, we can delegate. Clarify your boundaries, because what I'm seeing people do is when they get tired, they just start saying yes and yes and yes, and then they even get more burnt out because we have a tendency to underestimate how much time something's going to take. So know what your boundaries are. What can you say no to? Are there things that you can eliminate? Are there things that you can delegate? And again, just having that conversation of managing your time. But I always like to say we don't manage time, we manage choices. So of the things that you're doing, what's on your A list, what's on your B list, and what's on your C list? And I'll tell you, when I was able to kind of establish those boundaries, I stopped trying to be everything to everybody. But I had to go through this fear of, oh my gosh, if I say no, is that going to be okay? But when you talk with your supervisors, when you talk with the people you're serving, and you say, here are the things, here's what I would like to do, how can I prioritize these? That helps give you some personal boundaries, and that gets you more time for, again, some of that self-care. And really, I always encourage people more than ever, express what you need verbally. Right now, everybody's like, I'm fine. I'm fine. How you doing? I'm fine. Feelings inside not expressed. Let people know, hey, I just need 5 minutes. I just need 10 minutes. I just need to step away. Letting people know. And sometimes we get in this idea of, well, they should know. They should already know what I need. They should just automatically stop shoulding. The minute you should, that creates an irrational belief system, and that creates, again, more of that fatigue. So getting re-engaged, express what you need. If you, here's, again, looking at this Holmes race stress scale, this is something that we also give to people. And within the last year, you're supposed to circle the things that have happened to you. And the higher your score, of course, the more opportunity to look at self-care. If you look at these things, again, many people are experiencing these things on top of the trauma of COVID. Changes in residence, changes in schools, changes in sleeping habits, eating habits. Should I go? This major holiday right now is causing a lot of stress. Should I go? Shouldn't I go? Should we have it? Shouldn't we have it? Should we travel? Should we travel? Again, all that uncertainty, but know what you can have control over. But recognizing, hey, here's where I'm at. This is where I'm at on this journey. Here's where I want to go. And really focus on what you can control. Right now, everybody's trying to control everything. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I can control how I respond. I can control what I'm doing myself to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. I'm doing what I can to help others. I'm trying to educate. I'm sharing with them best practices, focusing on what you can control. What's happening is sometimes people are getting caught up in the stuff they can't. So know what matters. What is your value? What's your definition of success during a pandemic? What does success look like for you right now in your current positions? What are those things that matter? And then what are the things that you can control? And that's what you should be focusing on. Again, Venn diagrams are always fun to really look at, knowing what I'm doing the best I can with what I have, not comparing myself to other people, not, again, just looking at what I don't have, focusing on behaviors and attitudes, and especially those stories. Because the stories we tell ourselves impact our resiliency. The biggest thing that you see with resiliency is the idea of the ability to bounce back during adverse situations. What can we do to manage our emotions? What can we do to reframe? I need to clarify my purpose, because you know what? Right now, what is your purpose? What is it that you're trying to do? Why are you doing it? And why is it so important to you? Right now in organizations, I would be encouraging you to, again, really look at your purpose of the organization. What's your vision and mission? Are you doing that on a daily basis? That's going to help you deepen your connectivity. If everybody knows why they're supposed to be doing what they're doing, they know how and they know what, it again builds that resiliency. And sometimes, again, people say, well, I just got to practice positive. I'm not talking about blowing sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and all that stuff. I'm just asking you to think about, where are we currently at? Where are we going? And I want to look at hope. Again, if we have hope, we have resiliency. We have, again, looking at vaccinations, we're seeing hope for maybe things coming our way. We've seen hope in sales, and, we see people coming back in for activities, watching for hope. People need hope. Moderate stress, we got to moderate it as best as we can with self-care. That's why I say it's important to really focus on some of these things. Where are we at? And let's look at it. Reframing is the biggest things, my friends. Reframing. Is this going to matter a year from now? Right now, everybody's got kind of this never-ending to-do list, and I have like 52 things on this to-do list. Prioritize, A, B, C. And you know what? Be okay with letting go of some stuff. Is it going to matter? Sometimes we get so caught up in the daily grind that we forget about the big picture. So is this going to matter a year from now? I remember when I first started as a school counselor, I had an office, and it was connected to another teacher who was the special ed teacher. And he looked exactly like Cosmo Kramer. if you're a Seinfeld fan, and we had an adjoining door. And my first year, I had this never-ending to-do list. I was going to do this and this and this and this, and I was getting myself so exhausted. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it through my first year as a counselor because I'm burning out. He knew that I was, again, suffering from this compassion fatigue. He would slide through the door like Cosmo Kramer, and he'd be like, Schaefer, if it's not going to matter in 2010, let it go. Don't worry about it. And so again, he really helped me focus on this idea of trying to really look at what is going to matter. Does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? The more we can reframe it, the better off we're going to be. And oftentimes people lose sleep over some of the littlest things. So reframing it. There's also what's called irrational belief systems. And Albert Ellis, if you've taken a psychology class or have known anything about cognitive behavioral therapy, they talk a lot about this idea of our thought patterns. And we have some beliefs that sometimes become irrational for us. And we have to sometimes dispute those. How many of you guys have ever found yourself wanting to catastrophize? You know, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and oh my God, it's going to be terrible. Catastrophizing is an irrational belief system. That is, what if everything goes wrong? What I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to reframe it to think, what if everything goes right? And when we start to look at what if everything goes right, it helps us minimize some of that catastrophic thinking. Right now during the holidays, again, do I have all of this? Do I have this? I got to make sure it's perfect. If it's not perfect, it's not going to be, again, a great thing. I'll tell you right now, most people don't remember perfect. They remember the times where you're like, oh, we had to go looking for hot dogs on Thanksgiving or Christmas because our turkey burnt, whatever. They remember, again, the genuine, not the perfect. So reframing. You know, right now, the idea that it's a dire necessity for adults to be loved by significant others for almost everything they do, that's called people pleasing. And if you have this strong desire to have external validation from other people, we've got to look at kind of your own relationship with yourself. What is your self-respect? Are you just saying yes because you don't want to make anybody unhappy? Because you're trying to win approval? Again, walk into a room. And when you walk into a room, how many of you ask, boy, I hope people like me? Versus, oh, boy, I hope I like them. Again, this people pleasing, it's a rational belief system. Realizing that, again, you're doing the best you can with what you have. And there may be times where it's not going to go the way you want it to go. And that's okay. What did you learn? What can you do differently? You know, how many of you remember back when you first started doing go-to meetings or webinars? I remember some of my friends had no idea what Zoom was. And they're like, oh my God, I've never even learned how to do this. I remember watching myself back in March trying to do Zoom training. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not very good at this. I go back and I laugh at some of those videos that I recorded because I'm like, I've really progressed. So you don't have to be perfect. Again, look at what's working, what's not working. What can you do a little bit differently? Right now in your businesses, what's working? What's not working? What can we do differently? That is the key, getting past that irrational belief. There's also what's called embrace the suck. My military friends, when I was teaching military soldiers coming back into civilian life and we were doing some leadership skills, they taught me about the importance of bracing the suck. They said, you know what, Lisa, there's going to be days that you know it's just going to suck. And you just got to go through it and be okay with it. And again, it's not horrible when they're not the way that we want them to be. We just realize that we have to go through this to get to the other side. Anybody who's a small business owner or has started their own business has embraced the suck. They have realized that there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. And again, they're trying to look at the conditions. What did I learn? What can I do differently? Because I know that not every day is going to be rainbows and unicorns. So embrace it. It's okay. I remember listening to RJ when he gave his presentation. He talked about the idea of expect at least 10 things a day to go wrong. When you expect 10 things to go wrong, then you can adjust instead of getting caught up of, oh my God, this is terrible. I can't believe this is happening. Embrace it. That helps with resiliency. The other big thing is we avoid. Right now, people are shutting down. They're trying to avoid those tough conversations. Right now, it's a matter of trying to face it, trying to understand, here's where we're at. Where are you at? What do we need to do to move forward? Have those difficult conversations. Oftentimes we have these difficult conversations in our head. We need to say something to somebody, but we just keep playing it over and over in our head, and we avoid them because, well, I don't want to upset them, or I already know this is stressful. And you can go in with a tough talk and just say, help me understand. Here's where I'm at. Here's where you're at. What do we need to do to work together? And now more than ever, instead of, again, just burying our heads in the sand, we've got to address to say, hey, we're all in this together. What do we need to do? Here's what I can do to support you. What can you do to support me? And just even asking people that question. I realize that you're going through a tough time. What can I do to support you? Or you know what? This was a difficult day. What can I do to support you? And asking those questions help people move into some of those crucial conversations. And again, moving forward, expecting things to go wrong. That is, again, this idea, a rational belief system says, I got to be perfect 100% of the time. Expect something. Perfect isn't such a thing. There's always going to be something. I love watching people who are on their wedding days and they want their wedding day to go just perfectly. But you have to look back and realize it's probably not going to be perfect. There's going to be little hiccups. There may be little situations, but how you roll with it becomes the fun part of it. So again, the world is full of improbability, and some of your best laid out plans may not happen that way. I was having to give a presentation, and all of a sudden, halfway through the presentation, the power went out. So, okay, what do I need to do? How do I roll with it? I could have got stuck thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. Just roll with it. How do we adapt? So again, just realizing things are going to happen. And the other big thing is realizing too that, everybody's searching for happiness. Oh, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. Happiness is actually a byproduct of purpose. And when you are doing your purpose, it makes it easier for us to be resilient. Again, people are like, oh, I just want to sit on a beach and relax and do nothing. I give you a week, and then you're going to be bored. And then you're going to be thinking to yourself, man, I really miss what I was doing. You're doing what you're doing because you have a purpose. You're doing what you're doing because there's something that gives you joy, and there's something that puts you into flow. If you say, Lisa, no, I'm not, then I'm going to ask you, why are you still doing what you're doing? Because again, trying to find that process of what's your purpose. And it doesn't have to be this grandiose purpose. It can be just your purpose for the day. On a daily call, I always like to say, my purpose is try to add one thing of value to somebody today. I want somebody to take away just one thing that might help them live a life that shines. I just want somebody to walk away with realizing that it's okay to sometimes have a bad day, but there's people here to support you through those bad days. That's my purpose. Again, just helping one person, adding value, keeping people safe, helping people through difficult times. What is your purpose? And when you're doing that, that generates that happiness. And you want to challenge your beliefs, challenge the ideas. Oftentimes I always like to ask people when they get kind of caught up in these irrational beliefs, how do you know that to be true? Are you going in circles trying to solve this problem? If you are, there may be something in your belief systems. We've got to be resilient and think, okay, what do I need to do different? Is there something inside of me that's preventing or keeping me from taking action? Am I bothered by the thoughts? Should do, act, I should feel this way, I should think this way. Right now, more than ever, I'm hearing people getting caught in this one. Well, you know what? I should be more helpful because I'm in the helping profession. I should be doing this, or, I should. What do you want to look back on? Just realize you're doing the best you can with what you have right now. And if you find yourself should being, you got to face some of that reality. Are you thinking too magically? Well, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm just going to run away. And, I'm just going to quit my job. I'm going to go. And I always like to tell people, sometimes wherever you go, you're already there. So sometimes it comes with you. So realizing that quitting your job isn't necessarily the thing that you need to do. It's how do I, again, look at this problem and reframe it. Reframe it from problem to challenge. And you've been in challenges like this before. You've been in adversity before. You've gotten through it. What's worked for you? What have you done in the past? And again, helping people realize that, because sometimes in compassion fatigue, we forget about all these things and we forget about the importance of processing. And one of the things too is this fear of what others think of me. People are always going to think something, but I always like to say most of the time people are more worried about what they're doing than what you're doing, unless they're drama kings and queens. And if they're trying to basically deflect and displace things onto you, I always like to say, put the mirror up. Whatever they're putting out is coming back to them. So realizing that, again, there may be people thinking of you differently, but they'll think of somebody else differently tomorrow. What do you think? What's in your values? And do they align with what you're doing? And again, are you becoming sometimes paralyzed? Sometimes this fear is overcoming people where they just don't even take that first step. I just don't even know where to start. Well, then chunk things. What's something I can do in the next 10 minutes? What's something that I can do just in a walk? One of the things I tell people, get up and move. Just 10 minutes of movement. I don't care. Turn some music on, dance wherever, walk around the block. Just quick movement of your hands, getting your energy level up, getting your body language up. That'll help kind of move you out of that paralyzed state. And really, if you're finding yourself using yes, buts, well, I'd really like to do that, but, oh, I think that's a great idea, but I'm going to ask you to say yes, and. You know what? Yes, yes. And I think we could try this. I think we might be able to do this. I think this could be something we should look at. Use yes, and. It helps you in reframing and building some of that resiliency to get you out of that belief system. Again, how do you know it to be true? People are telling themselves story after story. I'm exhausted. If you keep walking around telling yourself you're exhausted, you're going to be exhausted. What are you telling yourself? What's the internal dialogue look like? Is there anything really supporting this belief to be true? Well, yeah, I just worked 12 hours and I've worked 7 days in a row and we've had to work short. I tell people, don't use phrases like we have to work short today, because that sends into your brain pattern exhaustion. Oh, I'm going to have to do more with less. That do more with less is causing exhaustion. Change your language. We're going to do the best we can with what we have today. Here's what we have today. Here's what we're going to be able to do today. Here are maybe some of the things that become a little bit lower priority. Here are our high priorities. Again, choice management. Just that language. Because if I walk around all day going, man, I'm burnt out, man, I'm stressed, I'm tired, I'll tell you right now, people will feel it. Whatever your brain is telling yourself, you can talk yourself into it. So again, focusing. What's appropriate, realistic? What's the belief that I can move through? And how would I feel if I substituted this new belief for my blocking belief? If you do believe perfect is the way it's supposed to be, what if you just said, I'm just going to be present? I'm not going to worry about all these things. I'm going to be present in what's happening right now. I'm going to have empathy and focus. I'm not going to worry about all those things I can't control. And testing your thoughts. When something happens, how do you know it to be true? For example, sometimes people say, man, my boss is really upset with me. Or man, my colleague is really, really mad at me. How do you know that to be true? And you got to test your thoughts. I used to work with somebody who I felt at the time was the story I was telling myself. was a micromanager. Wanted to know everything I was doing at all times. And I got really frustrated. And I started to say to myself, you know what? Does he not trust me? Does he not think I'm professional? Does he not think I'm good at what I'm doing? I got so consumed thinking that it was something I was doing. In reality, I just had to reframe and say, okay, Lisa, he's just somebody that wants more detail than I'm used to giving. So that's important to him. He wants more of that detail. It's not always what I'm doing. It's just his need for understanding the process. So reframing that, reframing the idea of, what's going on? What's happening? Why are you in what you're in? What are you doing? That self-reflection becomes so key. And again, if I'm being great right now, what am I doing? What's my definition of great? Because everybody knows what great looks like. And we always kind of judge other people on what we think great looks like to them. Oh, you're being great here. But what does your great look like? What does your great look like during a pandemic? What's success mean? So again, letting go of our egos, trying to think of what can I do? If you haven't heard Cy Wakeman, I would encourage you to jump on YouTube. She's got an excellent channel. She talks about ego-driven leadership. And she talks about, again, just this idea of having an S-bar in place for your thought processes. What's the situation? What's the background? What's the assessment? And what's the recommendation? The situation is maybe I blew up at a colleague because I was so tired. The background was, well, I worked a 12-hour shift and I had a lot of high critical cases that I was working on. What's the assessment? Well, again, I need to go back and just kind of maybe apologize or own it and ask, this is what I could have done different next time. That's that recommendation. Here's what I want to try to do. So doing that self-reflection, asking for feedback. Right now during compassion fatigue, sometimes you just want some feedback. How am I doing? Am I doing okay? Most people want to know, am I doing all right? And they're asking for that feedback. So when you ask for it, it makes it easier to take it versus somebody coming up and saying, can I give you some feedback? Nobody wants you to do that. I don't know. I don't want you to give me feedback. But again, being aware of that. Why are you here? What's your purpose? Reframing things. When you reframe, that builds your resiliency. You know what? What are you learning from this? This is a continuous learning experience right now. You're learning agility. You're learning to be 1% better. You're learning that maybe I need to take a step back and look at our processes and realize this isn't something that needs to be done. Reframe this as a challenge. See it as a way to overcome adversity. How can you be agile? And having that growth mindset. One of the big things with compassion fatigue is, I just can't keep doing this. I don't know how long I can do this for. I need to move on. Just have this growth mindset. I'm doing the best I can instead of thinking, this, and this has to be this way. What can I adapt? What can I let go of? What can I control? And sometimes I may have to move outside my comfort zone. Right now, we are outside our comfort zones. We're having to re-identify situations. But be a problem solver during this time. Because when we can get into problem solving, it helps reduce compassion fatigue. Here's what this person needs right now. Here's what I can do right now. What can I focus on in the next 10 minutes? What can I do in the next hour? Developing what are the possibilities? How can I effectively deal with this? And again, setting up these boundaries. I saw this on Facebook back in April. I thought it was hilarious for people that are working from home, having a separate room. A lot of times people are like, I don't have a separate office when I'm working from home. I have to make do with what I have. Well, this mom decided to set some boundaries and put this on the window to that area and just basically said, please do not interrupt me unless these things happen. Knowing what your boundaries are. And it's okay to set boundaries. Again, people are like, well, no, I have to say yes to everything. You can't say yes. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So what is your yes? And is it, again, giving you the biggest return? What can you be doing? So again, remembering that. And just even increasing your personal control and your personal awareness and acting as though you are in control. You do have control. You have control of how you think. You have control of how you respond. You have control over how you react. And again, that's what you have control over. You have control over doing the best you can with what you have. If you react, that's when you lose control. And again, that's when you start to feel as though you're out of control. And I always ask, what can we do a little bit different next time? And doing this rocking chair test, I think this is one of the biggest things that helps us stay focused. I actually had an instructor who said, you know what, write your obituary. And I thought, oh, that's really quite morbid. But he had this idea. He was a Stephen Covey fan, and he was all about start with the end in mind and, write your obituary. I like to call it the rocking chair test. Looking back, and people are coming for your 90th or 100th birthday. What do you want them to say? What do you want them to do? I love some of these documentaries where they're interviewing people in their 90s, asking them, looking back on your life, what did you find as successful? What do you wish you would have done more of? What did you find as the biggest joy? And it's always the simple things. It's always the values that they take with them, the family, the friends, the engagement. It's having that purpose, feeling as though they made a difference. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're making a difference. If you're on this call today, you're making a difference. So when you look back on it, what do you want it to be? If you have kids at home, what do you want your kids to remember about this? What do you want them to be able to take away? Oh, mom and dad were stressed out during that pandemic. Whew, they were so stressed and they were yelling all the time and they couldn't get things out of control. What do you want them to remember? And again, realizing that, hey, this is a very difficult situation. It's a tough situation, but we get through this. We can get through this as long as we, again, focus on what we're doing and going easy on yourself and assuming positive intent in people. Compassion fatigue happens sometimes when we think other people don't care as much as we care. And if we think other people don't care as much as we care, we get into kind of that victim mentality. We get into kind of that, oh God, what is wrong with them? Oftentimes I ask people to assume positive intent. Maybe it's not that they don't care. Maybe they had to shift things because they have other situations going on. We have a tendency to want to assume a lot. For example, how many of you ever get road rage right now? Some of my friends are like, I'm so tired. I go to work and people try to cut me off. And then I get upset and I show them an international sign for upset and I yell and again, they're reacting. What if you assume positive intent? You don't know what's going on. Maybe they had to rush to the hospital. Maybe they had some type of situation going on with a child. You don't know. Just assume positive intent. That helps us stay out of that anger stage. Assuming positive intent. The examples I give is a lot of people have been using like bingo cards in Zoom and just, again, going easy on themselves. Trying not to be perfect. I'm going to encourage you too, if you can, to do a digital detox. Right now, the phones, the electronics, everything, again, if we can step away. The average person checks their phone 150 times per day. That's the average person. And they say every time you check your phone, it takes approximately 3 minutes to get refocused on what you're doing. So if you're checking your phone 150 times and it takes 3 minutes to refocus, that's time that you could be using for self-care. And again, with this digital detox, relieving compassion fatigue, what I'm seeing is a lot of people are using email as their choice of communicating nowadays. That's causing more stress. I give you the rule of 3. If it's going to take more than 3 emails, pick up the phone and call them. And if you can, try to get face-to-face with them. And it can be face-to-face in a Zoom call. It can be face-to-face in something, that aspect. But if it's going to take more than 3 emails, pick up the phone. And then people say, well, I need to have it in an email. Send a recap of what you talked about. As per our conversation, bullet point number 1, bullet point number 2, bullet point number 3. What's overwhelming us is we're trying to do bullet 17. Really think about that rule of 3. What are the 3 main things we need to focus on today to make it through? What are the 3 main things I need to focus on in this hour to make it through? And sometimes you may have to get down to the 15 minutes. What are the 3 things I need to do to get through this 15 minutes? And helping yourself kind of realize that. Digital detox, emailing stress, compassion fatigue right now because people are like, oh, I can't keep up with everything. Again, looking at overchecking your emails wastes time. People aren't always expecting 100% of quick turnaround. I ask you to look at some of your standards during this time. You know, right now, they say 40% of people expect a response within an hour. That means 60% of people are okay with it not being within the hour. So again, getting and letting people know, hey, I'll be checking emails during this time, or I'll be checking statuses at this time. One of the things now, people are getting compassion fatigue because they're blurring their boundaries. Because again, if they're working from home, if you're answering or sending out emails at midnight, again, what's the tone? I encourage people, you know, they say, well, I woke up at midnight and I remembered I had to do this. Put it in your draft box, send it in the morning. And again, if you get up at 6, send it at 6. Don't send it at midnight. Because again, especially if you're supervising people, if I get an email from my supervisor at midnight, I automatically think I better respond. And again, then the supervisors get frustrated and they say, well, why are they emailing me at midnight? Again, you kind of set that tone. So I encourage you maybe just to, again, manage that email stress. Minimize those interruptions if you can. Turn off the notifications. Schedule some time for yourself every hour. You know, move emails out of your inbox, read them, and try to avoid, you know, processing irrelevant stuff. You know, again, realizing that that does take time. And when you prioritize with compassion fatigue, it's going to help you reset your mind again. And I talked about this before, but important today, then do it today. Important but later, put it on the schedule. Unimportant but needs to be done today, delegate it to somebody. And unimportant and later, delete it, get rid of it. It's something you don't need. So prioritizing who needs it, what do they need? Is it going to require more than my skill set? Right now, I'm asking people to stop asking how and start asking who. Who can help us with this? You know, people are trying to be everything to everybody. Start asking who is it? Who has these skill sets? Who can I delegate to? Instead of how do I have to do this? How much time do I have to take? Who can help? That's going to help drive some of your momentum. Other things, delegating, you know, right now I put the dishwasher as a picture because people are telling me, man, this dishwasher is so frustrating to me. You know, if you're coming home from work and you're exhausted and you think I have to do all the dishes because I'm the only one that can stack it right, or I can't take a day off at work because I'm the only one that knows how to do it. I'm going to tell you right now, done is better than perfect. Delegate it, select the task, select the person, plan it. And if they don't get it at 100% the way you would do it, be okay with it. Perfect isn't always necessary. Again, people are like, yes, it is. It's got to be this way or the dishes won't get clean. Coach them on what you want, help move them through it. But again, a lot of times people say, well, it's just going to save me time if I do it myself. Delegate. You got to be able to delegate. That's going to help with that compassion fatigue. Know what you can. And over, done is better than perfect. If that becomes your mantra, I would encourage you to do that, because what we find is if you're a perfectionist, you may put things off and you may procrastinate because you don't want to start because you don't know if it's going to be perfect or not. So I always like to just put this in people's minds. Done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. And again, there are some situations where you need to be perfect, but that perfection requires you, again, that skill set. But realizing, hey, am I doing what I can to be 1% better today than I was yesterday? That's that growth mindset. And oftentimes, you know, we talk about eating well, that's going to help boost up that compassion fatigue. That is essential. keep moving. You know, again, it's 10 minutes of movement. I'm not a runner. A lot of my friends are runners. Good for them. Good for you if you guys are runners. That's great. I'm more of a dancer. So I'm going to turn on the music and I'm going to dance around. And it's just moving your body, keeping that movement going. That helps with that. Getting outside. You know, this summer, people have been finding more and more times to go to state parks and just getting out on the water. And now that it's snowed in Dubuque, it's beautiful. Get outside, have a snowball fight, get some of that sun in nature, that fresh air. You can meditate. You know, I've been taking up meditation, and I'll tell you right now, this is hard for me because I'm somebody who thinks a lot. And so just taking a 10-minute mindset, I try to do it right in the morning when I wake up. I do a meditation for intention for the day. What do I want to try to achieve today? And what attitude and what mindset am I going to bring to that? There's one supervisor I know in town who sends out these daily calm 10-minute meditations. She calls it the 10-minute mindset. And she sends it in a weekly email, just reminding people to meditate. They also have Headspace. Again, you can jump on and try to manage some of your stress through Headspace. There's also called Man Therapy. Man Therapy is a hilarious website for, again, helping men through some of the stress situations. Having some fun, doing some show and tell, doing some campfires, doing some games, doing some virtual backgrounds. You know, a friend of mine hosted a little campfire night with her team. So everybody got a little, you know, little kit, a little campfire kit. Have some fun. And don't set out to change other people. Set out to change how you respond to things. You're doing the best you can with what you have. You're connecting, you're encouraging, you're uplifting. You may be tired, but this too shall pass. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. So start focusing on the things that you can bring to the table. Look at things you're most gracious for and you're grateful for. And I'm grateful for you for taking time today to really connect and to really, again, focus on your own well-being. So thanks so much for being here. Justine, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
I've been taking notes the entire time. It's some of the things you're saying are just so obvious. It's how do we not think about it before? But Lisa, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. This is a great way to start a Tuesday, a great way to go into a holiday. Really appreciate it and appreciate everybody being here today. I'm actually going to quickly share my screen. So everybody who was a part of today, let me see here. As long as I show the right screen, we'll be doing all right. I want to do a quick little drawing for you guys to win a gift card to a chamber member business. So anybody, let's see if I get this.
Woohoo, a spinning wheel.
Here's the wheel of names. I love this. So get ready to celebrate. Let's see who our winner is.
So exciting, Justine.
I live for this. Heather Hyde.
Woohoo! Yay!
Well, congratulations, Heather. Thank you for being here. And I will, yep, look, we got the applause. Love it, love it. And I will be contacting you to find out which chamber member you'd like a gift certificate to. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I look forward to seeing you at future chamber events. And Lisa, once again, we love having you. Thanks for being here this morning. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, everyone.